This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of Alabama's finest jurists, a circuit judge in Baldwin County, Michelle Thomason, spelled Thomason, and she is a pretty and sweet and smart judge in Baldwin County. But folks, she is running for State Court of Civil Appeals. Now, those of y'all who don't know how the court system works, we have, is it 7 or 9 Supreme Court judges? 9 Supreme Court judges, always folks elected statewide. And y'all may know some of the Supreme Court members like Jim Maine and Tom Parker and Lynn Stewart and Mike Boland and Kelly Wise. Then there's the Court of Civil Appeals that hears appeals before they get to the Supreme Court that Judge Thomason's running for. And on that court now is Scott Donaldson from Tuscaloosa, Craig Pittman from Baldwin and Mobile, was born and raised in Enterprise, and Terry Thomas from Coleman.
Terry Moore from Mobile.
Terry Moore from Mobile, and who else now? Fifth one.
Bill Thompson.
Bill Thompson. Bill Thompson and I sit together at the ball games, at the Alabama games. He's got a son that looks just like him. Looks exactly like him. He said, we sit together. We've been seatmates there for a long time. Anyway, but now Michelle Thomason, my guest here, is running for Craig Pittman's retired seat. Craig Pittman has been a very good jurist for a long time, good guy, good friend of mine, from my neck of the woods originally, from Enterprise. But he's retiring, and he's actually endorsed Michelle. Michelle, good to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My viewers, doesn't she look like a judge? She's pretty as she can be. You know, people will say you remind them of Kelly Wise a little bit.
I've heard that before. I've actually heard that before.
I've known Kelly.
I take that as a compliment. Kelly's a good friend.
She's a good person. Now, tell me all about yourself. You were born and raised in Mobile.
I was raised in Mobile.
You're an Alabamian.
I am. I've been in Baldwin County for 25 years. My mother and my brother still live in Mobile, so.
Yeah. Got one brother.
I do.
Your mother still living?
Yep. She's doing well.
Now, you went to, then you went on to Mobile College, which is a Baptist school.
That's correct.
Are you a Baptist by profession?
I was raised Baptist, and I'm a Methodist. I have to say, my son led me into the Methodist side of things. He's a Methodist minister in Baldwin County, and but we became Methodist when he was a teenager, so we're Methodist now.
Now, Michelle, you don't go to that same Methodist church that Lynn Stewart goes to, do you?
No, Lynn's in Bay Minette. She's very involved in her Methodist church there.
I've heard, every Methodist minister I talked to. You know who, remind your son this, you know who was a fraternity brother of mine in Alabama?
Who?
Mike Watson, who became the bishop for all of Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
He was from Dothan originally.
Yep.
Did you ever meet Mike and Margaret?
I did not, but I certainly know who they are.
You know who they are?
Absolutely, absolutely.
He was the nicest boy in the fraternity. I mean, he always just so good. I just love Mike Watson. I see him at ball games sometimes. But so you went on to Mobile College, and now you married a boy from down that way?
My husband actually, was from Birmingham, and once we got married, moved down to Fairhope, where I live now. So,
Michelle, you have that one son.
I do.
He's 33, and he's got 2 children. You got 2 grandchildren.
I do.
They're right there by you.
Yep. Thankfully, the Methodist Church moves pastors around, and he's been a good ways away from me. But they moved him home in July, so I've been able to enjoy being a grandmother this summer. So
you're lucky to have them in the same town.
I sure am. I
was telling this story at lunch. My favorite person and one of my favorite characters in politics, and it's in my book, I'm going to give you after we get through and we talk about him at lunch, old Judge Heflin. You know, Heflin had the best wit about him.
Yep.
He was a natural storyteller, and Michelle, before he went on the state Supreme Court as Chief Justice, he was probably the best lawyer up there in Colbert County. He was a good trial lawyer. But his daddy had been a Methodist minister, And Heflin was very religious. Didn't wear it on his sleeve, but he was very religious. He was such a great storyteller that he would sit outside the Colbert County Courthouse and just regale people with stories. And there'd be 40 or 50 people gathered around, and he used to tell people, he'd say, well, you know, he was embarrassed, went to the Senate because his daddy was born over in Georgia. He says, well, you know, my daddy was a Methodist minister. They moved him around a good bit, and he was over in Georgia doing missionary work among the heathen when I was born. We came back home. I'll tell you one more. I won't take up your time, but old Heflin was, he made up this old character named Ham Venderson. And Ham was really just a colorful guy that, I don't know, I think probably he was fictional. And he says Ham was bad to get drunk on Saturday night, but his wife was the pillar of the First Baptist Church. And she was there every time the door was open. She was head of the Sunday school, and she'd beg old Ham to go to church with her. He'd acquiesce about once every 2 or 3 months, and he went with her this particular Sunday, and they sat down in the pew, and old Ham fell asleep. He'd had a bad Saturday night, and he fell asleep in his chair, and the preacher was giving a sermon. He pretty much hell and brimstone sermon, slammed the pulpit and says, everybody here who wants to go to heaven, stand up. And old Ham was still asleep. Everybody sitting there stood up. His wife was just petrified, you know, embarrassed. And the preacher went on, and went on. We got further in the sermon and said, everybody in here who wants to go to hell, stand up. Slammed the pulpit. It woke old Ham up, and he stands up in his own one, standing in the congregation. And the pastor looks over there and said, well, sir, what you got to say for yourself? And old Ham said, well, preacher, I don't know what we're voting on, but it looks like you and I are the only ones for it. You can tell that to your son.
I will.
Let him tell that one to his
will.
congregation.
I will.
But old Heflin was a great color story. He was Helen Keller's lawyer for her estate.
I didn't know that.
He was a brilliant lawyer.
How about that?
But you were in banking before you were at practice law.
I was.
What area of banking were you in?
Well, I actually have a business degree, and I was a banker for over 10 years, commercial lending. Started
in Mobile.
I started in New Orleans, actually, and when we
You already had your law school degree from Tulane then?
Nope, the banking came first,
Uh-huh.
and law was my second career. But my banking career is what sent me to law school. The work that I did at the bank, I did a lot of compliance work and a lot of legal work in the bank. I was the first real estate loan officer that they had at this small bank that grew very rapidly. And but I really enjoyed the legal side of it. And I had some deep roots in the law at my home anyway. My dad was he was in the Navy for 20 years, and he was career law enforcement. My mom worked for a trial attorney in Mobile for 38 years. So I was exposed to the law at an early age, and I had a deep love for the law. And when I started doing a little bit of that in banking, I thought I wanted to take that one step further. So I had, Jonathan was about 7 years old. My husband and my son were both, and my family very supportive. So I went to law school over in Tulane in New Orleans, and commuted home on the weekends to be a mom. Did that for 3 years. Got my law
Luther
degree
Strange
that way.
went to Tulane.
He did.
I got a lot of friends who went to Tulane. But y'all studied the Napoleonic Code and the stuff.
You get to choose.
You choose.
And I always knew I was coming home to Alabama to practice.
So you didn't have to do that then.
Didn't have to do that part. So.
I got a friend who had 2 sons who graduated from Tulane. I got to wondering about that. So you can choose one or the other.
You pick.
Hey, so did you miss banking when you left it though?
I did, but what I do now as a judge, I get the best of both worlds. I have, I do a lot of divorce work. That's the circuit work that I do. I do some criminal work. I founded a veterans treatment court in 2014, one of the first ones in the state, and I really, really enjoy that. That's a part of what I do now that I'm very proud of. But when you're doing complex divorce work, it takes a lot of business to do those. You're basically dividing a partnership.
That's right.
So, so I have kind of a unique skill set with the business and family, and I did that as a lawyer. I was a lawyer for 11 years before I took the bench.
Were you doing a lot of domestic work in your law practice?
I did, but I also did a lot of litigation work, trial work in the defense litigation area, and so I've got a unique skill set, having the business, experience as a lawyer and a judge, and the family court experience, and I think that's one thing that'll work real well for me in this position on the Court of Civil Appeals. Most of what they do is family law, family appeals from family courts, from judges just like myself. And the rest of what they do is business complex litigation, which I did as a lawyer and continue on. So I've got a particular skill set that I think will really work well, allow me to be an asset to that court.
There's no question, I don't endorse candidates, but that is, if you had to draw up someone who'd be a perfect candidate, you think about somebody born and raised in the state, in one of the metropolitan areas, go to college in Alabama, get your law degree, have a banking experience, which is a business experience, because you'll see banking cases.
Absolutely, lots of them.
In the Court of Civil Appeals, won't you?
Lots of them.
And you said 60% of the appeals are from divorces.
Yep, almost 60%.
But very seldom, I'm told though, are those divorce cases overturned. They usually rely on the circuit judge's decision unless there's some error. Not many of those cases overturned, are they?
There are a good many.
Are they? Mm-hmm. They'll tell you there's not. That they say that they rely on those circuit judges. You'll find some prejudice probably in some of those small circuits. Is that what you're saying, or the equity division is not right, or what?
Well, it's just a lot of folks, a lot of lawyers think because that's an equity court that judges can just decide whatever they want when they come in there, and it's not. It's an area of law that's deeply rooted in legal precedent and law, and we have to follow that law. And I think
it's really precedent rather than statutory, isn't it?
But a little of both. But yes, deeply rooted in precedent. That's something to me that is I cannot imagine being in the law, especially being a judge, and that not being the primary goal of your work, is to follow the rule of law. And as a judge, to follow that law and make good, sound decisions. And but if you don't follow the law, the makeup of the court right now is does a great job in really analyzing those cases and making sure that families and children are taken care of. And that's always been my goal. That's why I practiced that type of law when I was a lawyer, and that's why I chose to do this work when I took the bench. I asked for this particular court.
Did not many people want to take it?
No.
Is that right?
No.
You're lucky to come from a circuit, though, that y'all can specialize. That is much better for the people of that county. You take my area of the state, where my hometown is in Troy, and we're in a circuit with Coffee and Pike. I don't think our 3 circuit judges can specialize. I think it's a divorce case in the morning and a murder case in the afternoon. It's so much better to have a judge that really specializes in that.
And I don't think there's any area that's more important than when you're dealing with children and families. And in fact, about not too long after I took the bench, I brought a policy to our court that was adopted that is one judge, one family. And so when a family comes into our court system, even if another judge gets assigned part of it, we transfer that now so that one judge deals with that one family throughout the system. And it's worked really, really well. It's worked really well.
You bring up an interesting point. I've talked with friends of mine who practice law, and I'll ask them, a lot of them like to shy away from divorces because they're so acrimonious. But they say the division of property is not the hard thing. The hard thing is the children. Is that what you found too?
Absolutely.
That's what's heartbreaking for the lawyers, is that they don't have regard for the children.
You're right.
They get so acrimonious with each other that they forget to take care of their children.
You're absolutely right.
And the custody thing and all that sort of, they'll fight over custody more than they will $1 million.
They will.
Over that?
We've seen some changes. We've seen some changes lately in the direction the state's going. I've been a part of a movement for about the past 5 or 6 years to helping get past that. I use parenting coordinators in my court. I use mediators in my court. I try to share parenting in as many cases as I possibly can. And what we've seen since I started doing that is a huge drop in all of the contested cases. parties are settling more cases after working with parenting coordinators and looking at the shared parenting arrangements. And that doesn't mean cookie cutter 50-50. It just means sharing, both parents, just like they did when they were together, both parents being parents, and figuring out what that means as a divorced couple. Because you figured it out when you were married. Somebody may work long hours and somebody may stay at home. You figured out what that was. You can do it after. These folks just need help doing that. So our contempt filings are way down. Our modification filings are way down. We still have a huge caseload, but I've been tracking it, and it's been amazing to see what's happened. So the trend is to take that statewide. And we've actually got some folks working on legislation in that direction. Not so sure that legislation is necessarily the way to go. I wish we could just get all the judges on board with doing that as a policy a little bit more, and I think we'd see those those cases. And it's not about cases. It's not about the number of cases. It's about those families and the tension in those households and what environment those children are growing up in, and that's where we can affect the change.
Well, you know, I was thinking, though, Judge, you were talking, though, you kind of almost like precedent doesn't take precedent if you know the situation. Like you can ascertain that this particular mother or father is not really capable of fulfilling their duties as a parent. But this is a twofold question. But you've got Baldwin's a more well-heeled circuit than some others might be. You know, so y'all have the luxury of having a moderator or a family mediator or something. Smaller counties aren't able to do that, or are they?
Sure, absolutely.
They can do the same thing?
We have, there's a family mediation program in the state that is grant funded, and in my court as well. You know, Baldwin is a huge county. And while there's maybe some affluency there is just as much, if not more, rural area of our county. So we have the full gamut of demographic makeup. So
a small county like Coosa, they've got family mediators and all too.
There's a statewide grant that will fund attorneys some money to mediate those cases in family court. Absolutely.
In the Court of Civil Appeals, don't you have to prove some judicial error or not following precedent to overrule the court, though?
Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do, and in some particular areas, it's about that. In some particular areas, the court's allowed to review all of the facts and all of the evidence. They don't, you know, and see if there's a mistake that's been made. But it, you know, it's. I think that. I know that every judge wants to follow the law, and they do the best they can. I think the hardest thing in family law is it's not black and white.
It's not.
Because every family is different.
Exactly.
Every family comes in with a different set of facts. So sometimes you might think that you're making a good decision, and sadly, sometimes you make what you feel like is a good decision, even though some judges may know it does not comply with the law, and that's where you see those reversals come in.
Have you ever watched the movie, the show on Tuesday Night, Bull? On CBS. Do you like it?
I do like it.
I do
like it.
Are they really
it's
that
fascinating?
Are they really that profound jury professionals in our state that like Bull is in New York?
I've never seen them here.
You haven't seen them here.
But I know for a fact that in some states that they big litigation firms work those juries. They do trial.
They know.
They do practice trials
just
with
like
juries,
he does.
just like he does. Have done it for years and years. It's fascinating to watch.
The one reason I thought about that, the case last night, I watched Bull last night, was about this movie star who had adopted an Ethiopian child, and the Ethiopian father came and took him away, and the difference between Ethiopian law and it was pretty apropos that this could happen, you know. And so I thought when you were talking about that, I said, you know, family law is not black and white.
No.
And if you do you have any kind of like, you don't handle adoptions, that's probate, isn't it?
It is. It is. I did as an attorney. I did a lot. It's one of the areas of my practice I really enjoyed when I was practicing law.
Who's probate judge at Baldwin now?
Tim Russell.
He's been there a long time.
He has, and I'll tell you.
He's a non-lawyer though, isn't he?
He is. He is.
That is a hard job.
It is a hard job.
Being probate judge of a county. Does he have the tags too?
He has all of it, and he stays really busy. But I will tell you this: there's a rule that you can't run as a judge past the age of 70.
He's
and
hit
it's
it.
a crying shame
He's hit
that
it.
that rule is there when it comes to Tim Russell. It's a crying shame. He does a great job.
Well, there's 3 on the Supreme Court that are grandfathered out. Moore could not have run again.
Right.
Jim Maine can't run.
Right.
And there's somebody else, I think. Maybe the 3 of them. But it's not on y'all's civil court. Everybody there is under
Right.
60. But
Not
when
under
you-
60, but under 70.
Under 70, yeah. But the Bill Thomason's been on that court a long time.
Long time.
Bill's probably pushing 70. He may be hit by 65.
I don't think he's pushing 70. I think he just got on the court very young. Because I think he is, if I'm not mistaken, he is the longest serving judge that's ever served on that court.
I'm going to tell you something. I said this earlier. I ain't never seen a child look like they fall like that boy does. Have you ever seen his son?
I can't wait to meet him now that you've said that.
And he lives in Homewood, you know. I think that's where he was born.
He's the presiding judge of that appellate court.
Tell him you and I visited.
I sure will.
And old Scott Donaldson's was my favorite. Yeah. We text each other all the time. I get texts from Scott Donaldson during Alabama football games. We'll text, and John Merrill.
Yeah. I was just with John Monday night at an event. So
he's a good retail politician.
Yeah. Well, he tells
you
all
ought to
of
follow
us
him
what
around.
To do.
That's what you ought to do. Y'all talking about who you ought to hire for consulting? Say, Merrill, I want to go follow you around. He goes everywhere.
Well, when you're in charge of the elections, all the elections statewide, then you know how to do that. So
that's really what
right.
you ought to do. Just say, Merrill, can I just follow you wherever you go? Because he knows where to go. You know, he texted me Memorial Day, and he was Labor Day. You may not know this. There's a county up in northwest Alabama, below Tuscumbia, where Hefflin's from, Moulton County. I was up there about a month or 2 ago, speaking to their Rotary Club. That county has an event called the Terry Family Reunion. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I have heard about that.
I mean, it's like everybody in that county, they accuse all of us Southerners of being interbred, you know. But that county really is. I mean, half the people have Terry family roots.
Yeah.
And it used to be when I was first in politics, and I ran statewide, everybody went up there to the Terry family reunion.
That's what I've been told.
It was a must-go-to event. There were several events you had to go to. You had to go to First Money Trade Day in Scottsboro.
Yeah.
You ever heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
That was an event George Wallace and them always made. The Terry Family Reunion on Labor Day.
Yeah.
Mule Day in Marion County, Winfield. You had to make Mule Day. And Wallace and all them had never missed it. Hefflin never missed the Terry Family Reunion because he had good food there. And old Hefflin roamed around eating all day long. He knew where every barbecue place was in the state. And but they had good barbecue there. But they'd all make it. And I asked, Merrill sent me some pictures from up there. I said, well, Merrill, how many statewide people? I said, I was the only one. He's the only one who went to Terry Family Reunion. Are there any events down in Mobile like that, must-go-to events, like political events?
I can't think of any right off the bat. There are a lot of events. You know, Mobile State's really, really busy. Baldwin County does too. And I've been real involved in our Republican politics in Baldwin County for a long time, over 15 years.
You're not a new person to the dance in the Republican Party, are you?
No.
That's good.
No, I've been on the executive committee, the
Eastern
steering
Shore.
committee, 4 years as the Eastern Shore Republican Women president. And actually, I just stepped down last month so I could announce my candidacy because I just didn't feel it was ethical to do that while I was in that position. And but we hold some pretty big events, and the party
down there,
does.
yeah.
So we held a great event for all the senatorial candidates, and it was very widely attended. But we put on some good events down there.
I thought old Tripp Pittman ought to run for the Senate again. He's going to not run. Says he wants promised to serve 2 terms.
Yep, term limits are important to him.
So. Tripp's a good man.
His mom is in my Republican club, and she and I work very closely on a lot of committees together. So.
You know, I'll tell you this though. We were talking earlier about campaigning. I think you ought to campaign all over the state. But I told Tripp this in the last week of his campaign. there's an old saying in politics, all politics is local. And we have, the South has for historically had a very, very pronounced friends and neighbors politics. It started, if you can look at trend, there's a famous professor named Dr. V.O. Key who wrote the epistle on Alabama, on Southern politics, and said Alabama is the most pronounced there is. People will simply vote for somebody from their home area for that reason. So if I were you, I'd spend my last week in Mobile and Baldwin County, and all I'd say is I'm the Mobile, Baldwin County, and say you were Eastern Shore Republican and all that sort of thing. I'm not saying ignore Montgomery people, I'm just saying hit them early.
Well, I appreciate that advice.
I'd go back home and spend my last time there because they'll vote for you because you're from there. It's so pronounced, Michelle, that I will tell I teach Southern politics once a year at Troy University and the University of Alabama. And I go over this and I give them historical trends going back to 48. Look at this race. Look at this one. And the only reason they would carry a certain area is they were from that area. It's so pronounced that I say that they may know old Sam Jones is a drunk or crook, but they'll vote for him anyway because he's our drunk or crook, you know. They may say, we know him, but by gosh, he's our drunk or crook. So anyway, tell our folks in the last few minutes why you think you'd be the best candidate for Court of Civil Appeals. You're very well qualified, for sure.
Well, you know, Steve, sometimes in life you just feel called to something, and I didn't plan to be a judge ever. I felt called to it. I've been a judge the last 11 years, and I assumed I would retire from that position. Over the past several years, I've gotten calls from folks that have asked me to consider running for the Court of Civil Appeals. Again, probably because of my skill set, because of what I do, my experience in what I do. And I've turned them down because I loved what I was doing in Baldwin County, and I still do. This last year when I got the call, when Judge Moore was going to retire, I was asked to consider it. And it was just something that my husband and I talked about and we prayed about, and I just felt I felt that this is something God called me to do. Then I had to kind of figure out why. In the past few years, I have been able to do some things related to children and families, working with legislation, working with a legislative committee. I was president of the District Judges Association statewide. That allowed me to work with some of the legislation that involves families. And what I realized is that legislation is being passed. We've got several laws that were passed this year. They're going to take effect in January. That are going to significantly change the way family law is dealt with in the state. There's not a judge on that panel that has experience specifically in family law. Terry Thomas was a juvenile judge, but not on the domestic side. And that's why they contact me about that. And I just realized that for the benefit of our families in this state, it would be a benefit to have somebody that could interpret those new laws, that has been a lawyer and dealt with those issues, that's been a trial judge and dealt with those issues, that understands the issues that families and children have in that area. That's not all that court does. That court handles complex litigation, business litigation. I've got a background in that. So while there is some specialization on that court in some different areas, I think that I'll be an asset to that court. And I think that's why I've been called to it. And I think I'll be in a position to help more families than I have. And I'm excited about the prospect of that. I'm eager to take this to the next level. If that's not meant to be, I am happy as I can be to stay in Baldwin County and continue to serve the people of Baldwin County.
Well, you're very well qualified, and we appreciate you taking the opportunity to run for Court of Civil Appeals. Folks, our guest tonight has been Judge Michelle Thomason, who is a circuit judge in Baldwin County, and she's a candidate for the Court of Civil Appeals in the June Republican primary. We thank you viewers for watching. We thank Judge Thomas for being with us. Hope you'll tune again next week for Alabama Politics.
Thank you.